What you are about to hear is a recording from the only known witness to its cure. He calls himself only the patient. We advise you to listen closely. Some frequencies should never be found.
The obsession began, as most do, in the quiet corners of the internet. For me, Lara, it was a forum dedicated to the forgotten and the abandoned, a digital speakeasy for urban explorers who found beauty in decay. My nights were spent scrolling through grainy photos of dust-choked ballrooms and rust-eaten machinery. The ghosts of industry and opulence lay bare. But one name kept reappearing, whispered with a reverence that bordered on fear: Blackwood Sanatorium. It stood on a desolate bluff overlooking the sea, a skeletal silhouette against the bruised purple of the twilight sky. The stories that clung to it were as thick as the ivy that choked its stone walls. They spoke of a place where the wealthy and the desperate went to have their minds mended, a haven of progressive therapy that devolved into a house of horrors. The official records were sealed, the townspeople tight-lipped, but the legends flourished in the darkness. They spoke of strange lights in the windows, of whispers carried on the salt-laced wind, and of a place that held onto its memories a little too tightly. My fascination with Blackwood was more than just a thrill-seeker's curiosity. It was a desperate, grasping hope. My younger brother, Liam, was fading. Not in the way of a terminal illness, but in a slow, insidious unraveling of the self. It had started with small things, a forgotten conversation, a momentary confusion about the day of the week. Then came the glitches, as he called them, moments when he would freeze, his eyes wide with a terror he couldn't articulate, as if he were watching a memory that wasn't his own. The doctors had a name for it, a rare form of early onset dementia with temporal lobe epilepsy, but their diagnoses were just fancy words for, we don't know. Liam was a ship lost in a fog of time, his past and present bleeding into one another, his future a terrifying blank. It was during a late-night deep dive into the Blackwood archives that I found the posts from Patient X. They were fragmented, cryptic, and posted on a long-dead GeoCities page, a digital ghost in its own right. Patient X wrote of a cure, 4 elements of the mind, not through medicine, but through the very architecture of the sanatorium. He spoke of a whispering decay, a living, breathing fungus that permeated the walls and held the key to unlocking the mind's potential. He warned of the echoes, the psychic residue of former patients, trapped in a relentless loop of their most potent memories. And he spoke of a Conductor, a malevolent intelligence that orchestrated the chaos within Blackwood's walls. My heart hammered against my ribs as I read. It was the rambling of a madman, I told myself, but the hope, that insidious, desperate hope, had already taken root. What if Blackwood held not a cure, but an answer, a clue, something that could tether Liam to the here and now? I had to go. The first time I saw Blackwood in person, it stole my breath. It was a monument to forgotten grandeur, a Gothic masterpiece of granite and stained glass, now surrendering to the relentless embrace of nature. The air was thick with the scent of salt, damp earth, and something else, something cloyingly sweet, like overripe fruit and decay. I found a way into a broken window in the solarium, the glass crunching under my boots like crystallized sugar. The inside was a symphony of decay. Sunlight, thick with dust motes, streamed through the grime-caked windows, illuminating peeling wallpaper, overturned gurneys, and a delicate lace-work of cobwebs. But it was the fungus that captivated me. It was everywhere, a network of fine, silvery filaments that traced the cracks in the plaster, its luminescence a faint, ethereal glow in the shadows. This was the whispering decay. As I ventured deeper, the echoes began. A faint whisper of a woman's voice, humming a lullaby. The fleeting image of a man in a tweed suit, pacing frantically in a hallway, his face a mask of despair. They were like snippets of a film, projected onto the air for a fleeting moment before dissolving into nothing. They weren't ghosts, not in the traditional sense. They were memories, embedded in the very fabric of the place. In the head physician's office, amidst the scattered patient files and medical texts, I found it, Patient X's journal. It was bound in cracked leather, the pages filled with a spidery, frantic script. It told the story of Dr. Alistair Blackwood, a visionary psychiatrist who believed that mental illness was a product of aberrant memories. He discovered the fungus, which he called Amanita temporalis, and its unique ability to absorb and record the electrochemical signals of the brain, in essence, to record memories. He believed he could use the fungus to prune traumatic memories from his patients' minds, creating a tabula rasa upon which a new, healthier psyche could be built. But the journal also spoke of a terrible miscalculation. The fungus didn't just record memories, It amplified them, creating a psychic feedback loop that drove the patients mad. The echoes were not just memories. They were the last, desperate moments of the sanatorium's residents, trapped in an eternal, agonizing replay. And Dr. Blackwood, in his hubris, had tried to control the fungal network, to become its conductor. He had failed. The journal ended with a chilling entry. He is not the conductor. He is the first note in a symphony of madness. The true conductor is the chorus of the damned, and its song is silence. A cold dread washed over me, but it was too late to turn back. I was already a part of Blackwood's psalm. The sanatorium had a way of getting under your skin, of seeping into the cracks of your perception until you could no longer distinguish between the real and the remembered. With each passing hour I sped within its walls, my own sense of time began to fray at the edges. A minute would stretch into an hour would compress into a fleeting moment. I would find myself standing in the corridor with no memory of how I got there, the faint scent of lavender or cigar smoke triggering a wave of nostalgia for a life I had never lived. The echoes grew more vivid, more insistent. I saw a young woman in a white dress, her face a mask of joyful tears as she waltzed with an unseen partner in the derelict ballroom. I heard the desperate pleas of a man, begging for forgiveness from a shadow that wasn't there. I felt the cold, sharp sting of a phantom needle in my arm, a ghost of a long-forgotten treatment. These were not my memories, but they felt as real as my own. The whispering decay was not just in the walls, it was in my mind. Patient X's journal was my only guide, a man's map through a landscape of memories. It spoke of nodes, areas where the fungal network was most concentrated, and of keys, objects that held a strong psychic resonance and could be used to navigate the temporal labyrinth. My first real test came in the children's ward. The air here was heavy with a profound sadness, the walls adorned with faded paintings of cartoon animals with wide, unblinking eyes. In the center of the room was a single rocking horse, its paint chipped, its yarn tail unraveled. The journal spoke of a weeping echo, a child who had lost her favorite doll. To pass, I had to find it. I searched for hours, the faint, heartbreaking sound of a child's sobs echoing around me. I finally found the doll in the incinerator room, its porcelain face cracked and blackened. As I picked it up, a wave of grief so powerful it brought me to my knees washed over me. It was not my grief, but I felt it as if it were. When I returned to the children's ward and placed the doll in the rocking horse's saddle, the sobbing stopped. The oppressive sadness lifted, and for a moment I saw her, a little girl with blonde curls, her face streaked with tears, now smiling at me. Then she was gone. The sanatorium was a puzzle, a series of emotional locks that could only be opened with empathy. But with each lock I opened, a piece of myself was left behind. My first encounter with the conductor was not a confrontation, but a seduction. I was in the library, the shelves lined with books whose pages had long since melded into solid blocks of mold. I was looking for Dr. Blackwood's personal research notes, which Patient X's journal hinted were hidden there. As I reached for a leather-bound volume, the world around me dissolved. I was no longer in a derelict library, but in a warm, sunlit kitchen. The scent of baking bread filled the air. Liam was there, sitting at a table, his face clear, his eyes bright. He looked up at me and smiled, a real, genuine smile, the kind I hadn't seen in years. "I remember everything, Alara," he said, his voice clear and strong. "The glitches are gone." Tears streamed down my face. I ran to him, my heart soaring with a joy so pure it was painful. This was it. The cure. But as I reached for him, a cold, discordant note echoed in my mind. It was a voice, ancient and vast, a chorus of 1,000 whispers speaking as one. "He can be whole again. All you have to do is stay. Become a part of our psalm. Add your voice to the chorus." The illusion shattered. The sunlit kitchen dissolved back into the dusty, decaying library. Liam was gone. The conductor was not a single entity, but a hive mind, the gestalt consciousness of Dr. Blackwood and his most tormented patients, all woven into the fungal network. It fed on emotion, on memory, and it was offering me a deal, my brother's mind in exchange for my own. The temptation was a physical ache in my chest. To see Liam whole again, to hear him laugh without the shadow of confusion in his eyes. But I knew it was a lie. The conductor didn't cure, it consumed. I had to find the source of its power. I had to find the nexus. Patient X's journal described the nexus as the heart of the rot, the original fungal colony from which the rest of the sanatorium's network had grown. It was located in the sub-basement, a part of the building that had been sealed off for decades. The descent into the sub-basement was a journey into the sanatorium's ID. The air grew thick and heavy, the sweet, cloying scent of the fungus now overpowering. The laws of physics seemed to bend and warp. Hallways stretched into impossible lengths, doorways led to rooms that shouldn't exist, and my own reflection in a shard of broken mirror was a stranger with my face. The echoes here were no longer passive memories. They were aggressive, malevolent. They were the raw, unfiltered agony of the sanatorium's most damaged souls, and they lashed out at me, trying to drag me into their eternal loop of suffering. A man who had been subjected to electroshock therapy cornered me in a corridor, his body convulsing, sparks flying from his fingertips. A woman who had drowned herself in a bathtub tried to pull me into a phantom pool of water that had materialized on the floor. I fought my way through them, my own memories and emotions a shield against their psychic onslaught. I finally found the nexus. It was a vast, cavernous chamber, the walls, floor, and ceiling a pulsating, bioluminescent mass of the whispering decay. In the center of the chamber, suspended in a web of fungal filaments, was a grotesque tableau, the calcified remains of Dr. Blackwood and a dozen of his patients, their bodies fused together, their faces frozen in a silent scream. This was the Conductor. As I entered the chamber, the chorus of voices in my head became a deafening roar. It showed me visions of Liam's future, a slow, agonizing descent into a vegetative state, his body a prison for a mind that no longer recognized itself. It showed me a future where I was alone, haunted by the memory of the brother I had failed to save. We can spare him this. We can give him a peaceful end. We can preserve his memory, his essence, in our soul. All we ask is that you join us. The Conductor was offering me a devil's bargain, a mercy killing for Liam, a painless absorption into the fungal network, in exchange for my own consciousness. My resolve wavered. The thought of Liam's suffering, of the long, slow goodbye that awaited us, was a weight I didn't know if I could bear. But then I saw it. A small, faint flicker of light in the heart of the pulsating mass. It was a memory, a single, pure note in the symphony of madness. It was the little girl from the children's ward, the one I had helped find her doll. She was smiling, her face radiant with a joy that was not a part of the Conductor's song of pain. And I realized the truth. The Conductor didn't just consume memories, it suppressed them. It fed on the pain, the fear, the despair, but it couldn't digest the joy, the love, the hope. It was a parasite that could only thrive in the darkness. I knew what I had to do. In my backpack, I had a flare gun, a standard part of my urban exploration kit. Fire was the one thing that could destroy a fungal colony. As I raised the flare gun, the Conductor unleashed the full force of its psychic power against me. The chamber dissolved into a maelstrom of my deepest fears. I saw Liam, his face contorted in a silent scream, his body withering away to dust. I saw myself, old and alone, my mind as fragmented as my brother's. But I held on to the image of the smiling girl, the one pure note in the cacophony of despair. I pulled the trigger. The flare arced through the air, a streak of brilliant red against the ethereal glow of the fungus. It struck the calcified heart of the Conductor, and for a moment, there was silence. Then came the scream. It was not a human sound, but the sound of 1,000 souls crying out in unison, a chorus of agony and release. The nexus erupted in a flash of blinding white light, and a wave of psychic energy threw me back against the wall. I scrambled to my feet and ran, the screams of the echoes echoing behind me, their voices no longer filled with pain, but with a strange, soaring liberation. The sanatorium was coming apart at the seams, the temporal distortions collapsing, the very architecture groaning and shuddering as if in its death throes. I burst out of the solarium window and into the cool, clean air of the dawn, my lungs burning, my mind a maelstrom of 1,000 fragmented memories. I didn't look back. The weeks that followed were a blur of sleepless nights and a constant, low-level hum of anxiety. The memories of Blackwood were a scar on my psyche, a phantom limb that ached with a pain that was not my own. I had destroyed the Conductor, I had released the echoes, but the whispering decay was not gone. I had carried a piece of it out with me. The change in Liam was subtle at first. A new word in his vocabulary. A flicker of recognition in his eyes when I showed him an old family photo. The glitches didn't stop, but they changed. They were no longer terrifying voids, but flashes of memories, clear and vivid, of people he had never met, of places he had never been. One evening, he was staring out the window, a faint, silvery luminescence in his eyes. He turned to me, his face a mixture of confusion and wonder. "I saw a little girl today," he said, his voice a whisper. "She was on a rocking horse. She was happy. A cold, terrifying realization washed over me. I had not found a cure for Liam. I had made him a part of the network. The Whispering Decay was not just a parasite, it was a symbiont. It needed a host, a consciousness to anchor it. And in destroying the Conductor, I had created a vacuum. Liam was the new Conductor, or perhaps the first note in a new psalm. I don't know if I saved him or damned him. I only know that the echoes are no longer trapped in Blackwood's decaying walls. They are with us now, a part of our lives, a constant, whispering reminder of the sanatorium on the bluff and the terrible, beautiful, and unknowable power that resides within the human mind. The Whispering Decay is not a disease. It is a new form of consciousness, a new way of being, and we are its pioneers. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I can hear the faint, distant sound of a woman humming a lullaby, and I know that we are not alone. The ghosts of Blackwood are with us, and their song has just begun.